is going to be one of those opportunities that you got to try and seize if you can. Starting up here at the top right-hand side of the map, we have our blue Protoss player, the heavy underdog in this series. He is ForJumy.
And then, of course, in the bottom left side of 2K Atmosphere, we're looking at the main base of our Red Terran player representing Team Liquid. It is Clem.
ForJumy going to be proudly representing Berserker Esports, and I don't know, Kev, I don't see any immediate, proxies across the map, no cannon rushes or anything just yet, but like you were saying, the potential of those like Stargate plays or things along those lines can definitely come out later. How do you feel about 2000 Atmospheres for that kind of like cheeky, cheesy stuff?
Actually, this might be the map where ForJumy will think, I'm just gonna play normal. Because the other day, I have one of the channel point redemptions. Whenever you watch a stream, you can get channel points. And it's like, I'll watch your replay. And Jumi showed up, and he's like, Roddy, I've got a replay for you. So he redeemed some channel points. I take a look at it, and it's ForJumy against Beyond on this map. And it's an absolutely insane 26-minute game, which he basically won. But Beyond just grabbed all his units and at the final moment stimmed forward, killed the last pylon with his last 3 or 4 bio units, and he eliminated ForJumy in a crazy base trade. But Jumi actually played one hell of a macro game, and he did it while forgetting extended thermal lens, even though he made 9 Colossus in the game. So maybe he thinks that this is his map to actually just play a normal macro game and see what he's made of and see if he can stand up to the test that is Clem.
If there's anything that is probably the definitive proof that you're just a godlike Protoss player, it is forgetting critical upgrades. I mean, Zest forgets critical upgrades and still wins with a heavy emphasis on those units. So if anything, you've just sold me that ForJumy is in fact the next coming of Zest.
Well, I am a fan. This is a funny opening here by Clem. Reactor first into 1 Marine and still 1 Reaper. So this is where the Reaper obviously shows up a bit later, but this is also where sometimes they do manage to get a great scout off because Protoss units are going to be in different positions because you think the window of the Reaper has passed, and then suddenly there's a Reaper in your base, and A, it could get the scout off, and B, it could still grab a probe or 2 as well. So actually kind of a cool little move here by Clem.
Yeah, and with that slightly later scout, the Stargate will already be about halfway done by the time the Reaper starts moving across the map, and is going to try and move around in a slightly more roundabout way, checking through the zone like a watchtower, then heading over to that nice little hop-up spot. ForJumy's Stalker is sitting at the front lines, and we'll see if he does rally that second Stalker over to where the Reaper would hop up, but I still think that Reaper should be able to get in and get that scout off that you were talking about, potentially see that Stargate.
Clem is still waiting though. Is Reaper now on patrol on the right side? So kind of a funny little opening here. Jumi did go Stargate like you said, and he's gonna go Oracle first. I'm expecting him to go Oracle into Twilight, into Robo way down the line. Here is that Reaper a little bit later. Grenade is decent, and it's gonna give Clem the scout that he's been looking for. Can it get out? Nope, it cannot get out. So not a bad start here for Jumi, but he does know he needs to be careful with his Oracle because Clem is aware of it.
Yeah. Clem is going to already have that Cyclone on the way. It's about halfway done. By the time the Oracle is able to make its way across the map, the Cyclone should be ready, and then it's just about kind of splitting up your units appropriately between the bases. You got a handful of those Marines ready to defend either your natural or your main, and you just put the Cyclone at the other location and should be relatively covered in preventing the Oracle from doing too much damage.
Clem actually opening up with a medevac here too, so I have the feeling he's going to try to get lucky. Oh, I like the positioning of that Cyclone. That's a lot of damage on this Oracle immediately. I don't think it goes down, but that is a lot of damage to take on your first Oracle, man. Jumi is playing greedy at home. He's already going up to 3 bases after opening Oracle and now also firing up Blink. This is one of these Hell or Glory kind of openings where, yeah, if you get away with all of it, Fear Dragon, it's awesome, but you also take a very real chance of losing this game in 6 minutes.
Yeah, now ForJumy did tag that army with the Oracle, so he knows that it was moving across the map. He knows that it's not just the Marines, but also that Cyclone in the mix. So he's positioning his Stalkers a little bit further forward, and Clem is actually just going to back off, feeling like he doesn't really want to take the chance that those Stalkers will just gradually pick away at his units.
Actually kind of cool by Jumi. I love that Stalker movement. These are the hidden, invisible things. We often get crazy over great macro, great micro, or awesome flanks, little traps. But these are the little things. Your units need to be in the correct position even before the attack shows up. So far, actually so good for Jumi. The one downside of all of this is that he did kind of lose vision of what's happening on Clem's side of the map. So at this point, he doesn't know about these Marines that have been flying towards the right side. But yeah, actually, Jumi's in a pretty sweet spot here. His 3 bases are up and running. Blink is done. He can obviously queue up charge right after it. So far, so good for the big underdog.
Yeah, if he's able to get the defense off against Clem's follow-up aggression later on, then he's going to be able to maintain actually a straight-up lead in this game. So we'll see how things go. He's got that Oracle still kind of posturing at the front. Stalkers are moving across the map as well as Blink is about to finish up. And, well, you were talking about that drop on the right-hand side. It is stalled out for now. So ForJumy maybe has an opportunity to dive in. There's not too many units at the front. They're a little bit further up the ramp. They are finally going to start moving on forward, but still a nice opportunity to get some free pickoffs here.
Yeah, but now you do need to worry about that medevac that's flying towards the main base of Jumi. Jumi does not have enough energy on that Nexus to recall. The stasis trap is decent, but it's not good enough to really fight the rest of the army. And this is where the 8 Marines do get unloaded in the main base. Jumi is going to warp in 2 Stalkers. That's not going to be enough. Maybe we can pull the probes for a split second. Yeah, he loses those 2 Stalkers immediately. And this is not a game you want to play against Clem, where you try to out-micro him at multiple fronts. My goodness, that's a lot of damage immediately. Medevac doesn't live.
No. Yeah, that hurts. Not being able to get the medevac and knowing that there's still just 7 or 8 Marines left over in that medevac. And now there's an army moving along the left-hand side over to that 3rd base. Guess what? Warp in over there is just a desperation move and to buy some time until the Stalkers get there. Stalkers try and blink forward onto the Cyclone, but then they actually end up blinking into the rest of the Bioforce. Getting some nice force shields over here, and the shield battery keeping things alive for a bit, so he will hold on, but also has to make sure that he's keeping an eye out for that medevac on the right-hand side.
Really smart by Clem to immediately disengage there the moment he saw the green battery. Now, even though those 8 Marines are still alive in the back of the main of Jumi, that medevac is very low on HP, so even 1 Stalker is enough to keep it at bay for now. Charge is done. Clem gets the heads up that charge is done. I am very concerned for ForJumy, especially I think the next minute is going to be kind of a living hell for him. I'm not exactly sure how he's supposed to get a good fight. This is where you wish you had a couple of Immortals. Well, he's got 1 against this many Marauders. I think you kind of want to have more than 1. The Widowmine fires and it's a pretty decent shot. And at this point, Clem has 25 army supply more. And it's going to be so hard for Jumi to not take more damage.
Yeah, coming in with a flank. Got some Widowmine set up over here as well to help deal with some of those Zealots. Takes out the shields of a handful of them. Does end up having to back off on the left-hand side. The right-hand side, well, oh man, Clem is actually focus firing down a couple of those Stalkers and then heading up to the main base, potentially just threatening that at least. But so far, you know, ForJumy is at least hanging in there. He is losing a lot of these gateway units and stuff. He needs to buy more time to actually be able to get something out of the robotics bay that's about to finish up here. But if he can hold on a little bit longer, there's maybe still some hope here.
Look at the mini-map though. The reinforcements are on the way for Clem. There is the very famous 2nd wave that is always ready to strike. And fighting 2 Widow Mines and a couple of bio units is doable. Fighting 6 or 7 Widow Mines, that's just not doable anymore. That's where you really want to have a Colossus. But I am afraid that this Colossus is going to be a day late and a dollar short, as Mr. Bitter would say. And it's starting to look
Widow
very
Mines
grim
getting
for
all
Jumi.
the hits that they really wanted.
Yeah, go ahead.
We do see that the drop heads back in and that 1 Stalker just barely out of position there as well. This is going to be definitely a rough situation. Now, ForJumy does take out the medevac. Should eventually be able to clean up the Marines after Stim wears out, maybe. He's technically staying alive, but that first Colossus, like, can it really make all of the difference now as it almost gets focus fired down there?
Yeah. And a good job, of course, by Clem there, picking up that 1 Immortal. The Immortal is actually very important in keeping those Marauders at bay. The Forge is going to take some damage. Clem is pulling these units out of position, which means the 3rd is there for the taking. A couple of Zealots is not going to be good enough. The Widow Mines will make this very complicated for the Protoss to engage. And game 1 is simply all Clem. Jumi tried, but it's 1 medevac with 8 Marines that Clem was very patient with, because he had it at the Zelnaga Watchtower for so long. He didn't want to reveal that it was out on the map. He just waited until Jumi would make a move on the other side of the map. And the moment those Stalkers started shooting at his bunker, Clem said, all right, this is where I know you're looking at your Stalkers, and that means the door is open in the main base. And Jumi not having enough energy on that recall, I think made him indecisive on whether or not he should immediately recall or maybe fight a little bit. And he's like, all right, I'll recall a bit later. But I think we all know that if you're an underdog Protoss against Clem and you lose 12 workers, yeah, no way, Jose.
Yeah, that's always going to be a rough spot. I did look at the energy on the recall, and I think he had enough energy at like the natural, so maybe that was going to be an option to recall. But the main base, it was at like 46 energy, I think, when the drop came in. So maybe he was waiting a little bit for that, but it still is just such a rough spot. If you don't immediately have that reaction, just be able to recall there, then you're just going to end up losing way too much. And like you said, Clem is not a player that you can play from behind against. And I actually really liked what you were talking about before also with ForJumy making the decision to try and play a little bit greedier. And he kind of got away with some of that greed thanks to his like positioning on stalkers and stuff. But it's a tough ask. There's no way around it, right? You have to basically just keep getting away with some of that stuff. You have to keep finding ways to deflect the aggression from Clem.
It really also shows how mature Clem became in his play, because I think a lot of Terran players would have still gone for that first move out with the 1 Cyclone, 1 Medevac, and a couple of Marines. But once the 5 Stalkers are there in position, yeah, you don't really want to run into that, because those Stalkers are just going to one-shot your Marines, they're going to kite back towards that battery, and there wasn't that much that Clem could do about it at that moment. But Clem also knew that his opportunity would come, and it did come, just a little bit later. Anyways, let's see what this man is made of in the second map then on the Romanticide. In the bottom right side, we are looking at the main base of the young German Proto, still waiting for his first map win in the big leagues. This is ForJumy.
And up here in the top left-hand side of the map, the red Terran player, a repeat champion for the European region. He is Team Liquid's Clem.
Not just a repeat repeater. A back-to-back-to-back.
Back-to-back-to-back, yeah. Young Clem has definitely made his mark on the European scene. Been cemented there for a bit now as one of the top players, so... You know, I think the bright side of all this is like this. In some ways, of course, you never ever as a competitor want to be like, yeah, I'm okay with losing. But this is definitely one of those matches ForJumy can approach in the group and be like, you know, I really have a lot more to gain than I have to lose coming into this. So hopefully that does also create a little bit less of a stressful like pressure for him, and he can maybe play a little bit better than he normally would.
It goes two ways. Like, I've been there before as well when I was a youngster, and I played in some Warcraft 3 tournaments where, you know, I was basically a nobody. You would go up against a Grubby or a Moon or a Sky, and it's very easy to think like, oh, nothing to lose, everything to win. But most of these guys, you know, and I was like that too, we're still competitive, and you're also worried about being embarrassed. You know, you don't want to have one of these best of threes where you barely kill a unit. So there is still some pressure in that regard where, okay, I'm probably not going to win, but I do want to show what I'm made of. I do want to play my A game, and that still creates a different kind of pressure.
Yeah, I think that definitely makes sense. You don't want to just have a super duper embarrassing experience for sure. And well, this is definitely one of the bigger stages that ForJumy's gotten to play on. So we'll see if he can bring some of that A game as we head into game number 2 on Romanticide. Got a Twilight Council opening over here, so it's a little different from last game with no Stardate.
And even though, like, we can obviously all tell ForJumy is like, hey man, don't worry, like, Clem is ultra good no matter what happens, you know, it's fine.
Yeah.
No matter how many people tell him that, there will still be some pressure for him. Because he also knows, like, hey man, I've played great games against some of the finer players in Europe. I know what I can do, and I do hope that I can show it on the big stage. But of course, none of us would ever hold it against him if this does turn into a pretty disastrous best of 3, which I don't think that first game was. It's just, it was just like, it was all right by Jumy, it's just that Clem was a bit too powerful.
Yeah, I feel like we're about to break out into like streamer advice. It's like, you know, when Rotterdam loses a game in a tournament or something, telling him, oh, don't worry, Kev, you played really well, and like, it's fine. Don't worry about the fact that you just lost. It's like, no, I still feel pain from that though. Like, don't tell me that my loss doesn't matter or that it didn't feel painful. Yeah.
I was a little bit surprised to see how quickly Clem lost that Reaper there. I mean, sure, the Reaper did hop into the main base. It saw the Cybernetic score, it saw the Twilight Council, so that's a bit of a scout. But then he actually took a weird route out, and he ran past not 1 but 2 Stalkers and just lost. It's a really good feeling for Jumy. Even though I don't think he was worried about losing too many probes against the Reaper, it's just annoying knowing that Clem has that Reaper around, that he will potentially have some vision on your first move outs. Now, Clem is kind of in the dark, so I kind of like this for Jumy.
Yeah, that is going to be kind of nice. And I mean, the time that the Reaper moved over to the front, didn't even really see that the Robo or the gateways were over there. So sometimes even just seeing a wall can help you set up where you maybe want to go for a siege up attack or something if you decide to do something a little bit earlier on. So do see a Raven coming on out and another tech lab getting started up on next to that barracks in the factory. So is Clem thinking about doing another little 2-base move out here?
Yes, but I also think he's a tiny bit concerned about DTs. I mean, Dark Templars are very popular in this matchup at this point, and Romanticide is a pretty decent map to open up with DTs. Clem only scouted the Twilight Council, so it could very well be a DT opening. Instead, it's going to be Blink Stalkers. This doesn't have to be a disaster for Clem, but yeah, you have to be careful with your Raven. You definitely want to make sure you don't lose it against a couple of Blink Stalkers, and you have to be careful. He's going to hunt this Observer down, so at least at this point, Jumy knows there is a Raven out. The auto turret is good enough to get the kill on the Observer, but it also means less energy to potentially keep some Stalkers at bay.
Yeah, and remember, it's not just going to be the Observer that was going to provide the high ground vision. The Warp Prism is there as well. Obviously, it's a little bit more vulnerable compared to just the Observer, but well, he still does have the opportunity to blink up to the main base later on if he so chooses. Stalkers are going to come on forward and focus fire down that bunker. Not losing any Stalkers just yet. Not losing too many hit points on most of them. But the bunker survives.
Oh, I thought he was going to get it. He is going to blink into the main base, but it looks like he shot at the factory. Now he shot at his own Stalker. Oh, no. We're going full Tyson Fury here. Oh, poor guy. That's honestly just a bit of nerves there. Wow, two very unfortunate misclicks there. Blinks into the main base, fires a full volley at the factory instead of the tank, and then when he wanted to move Commander Stalkers towards the top, he actually shot at his own Stalker, I believe, too.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a disaster.
This is definitely becoming a disaster. Only now is going to have those resources actually to throw down the third base as well. So it's not like there was a nice transition set up behind all this. He's only just now getting up the robotics bay. This is definitely really rough. And now the Raven comes in, is actually going to be able to snipe off a few probes over here, deny some mining time, deny some gas that was being mined. As the Stalkers try and push forward again, we see that there's just actually not even that many Stalkers left anymore, Kev. Like the Stalker count is actually heavily reduced. He's already lost 6 of them.
Yeah, that's just a few too many, and Jumy knows that too. Jumy is going to try to blink into the natural and kill the tank. He will succeed in doing so, but yeah, not before losing 4 additional Stalkers. So things are going from bad to worse. Clem has stabilized. Clem has 58 army supply at this point, even 62 after a couple of extra units popped. And don't forget about the Raven. This is not one of these scenarios where if you can just get one Colossus out, you're going to be fine, because you're not fine. Interference Matrix is going to disable that Giraffe, and I am afraid that this one is just kind of all over. Against Clem, you can't make any mistakes, and Jumy made 3 mistakes in a row there, and that is all that Clem really needs to just punish you in a very awful manner.
Yeah, Raven auto turret harass continuing to go on and sniping off even more workers. There's no mining happening in the main base right now. Clem is getting force fielded in over here, but he's going to drop right in on top of this army. Stutter steps on forward. Shield battery overcharged, but not enough against this kind of firepower to keep that Colossus alive. The shield battery gets taken out. So do most likely all the hopes and dreams over here of ForJumy in this series. Losing just a little bit too much over here. Even if you manage to clean up, which doesn't look like you will, it's going to be rough. 2-0.